Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, April 26, 2018, I think. Still 2018. Feels like, I don't know, a year or so has passed since we were last on the air. Plenty happening, lots to catch up on, and wow, man, it's been a morning. Okay, well, a little bit behind on getting the show started, but I think we managed to get synced back up in time. Daily Coast Radio is live now. There's nothing else you can do about it. Bill knows. He knows all the way from Portland, Maine, so that must mean you know too. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, today announces a new initiative to power all of his broadcast equipment with Dragon Energy by 2025. It's a good idea. We should all get behind it. I have a little dragon running on a hamster wheel to power the show. Why not? It can work. I don't know what Dragon Energy is, but I have it. I am it, whatever that might mean. Kanye West apparently tweeted something. Apparently he's like a Trump fan now, and this is causing huge uproar in an area that I don't have anything to do with and I don't know anything about. I guess it's supposed to make people mad or keep them on edge about what Kanye West is up to, but you know, you might have guessed I'm not usually in sync with what's going on in that sector, so it doesn't bother me. So we'll soldier on and continue with the coverage of, I don't know, the stuff that we white guys usually watch, I guess. And then no one will be any the wiser. It doesn't really make much difference. Okay, let's see. What have we here? Ronnie Jackson is on his way out the door, finally. I guess he is formally withdrawing. He's announced that he's withdrawing his nomination, or has asked, I guess you have to ask the president to withdraw your nomination. Maybe he won't do it. Maybe I won't do it. You know what? Maybe I'll call into Fox and Friends, and maybe I won't do it. Maybe I'll refuse, because I know that Ronnie Jackson is a fine gentleman, and it doesn't really matter one way or another. To me, honestly, if you want to be drunk on the job, that's your business. You know, I'm a hands off. I'm a libertarian when it comes to what, I don't know. He's calling Fox and Friends. He was on a rant, and I was actually late on the uptake, pressing the right buttons because I was, you know, watching in horror some of the video clip of the President of the United States calling into Fox and Friends to say, you know what, you don't always treat me great, but you treat me fair. That's what's so great about Fox and Friends. And you know something? I've developed an ability, and it takes 10 minutes to get around to tell you what the ability is. And I'm not certain what the ability actually was either. I heard him say it, but I couldn't really sort it out. He either has, I think he's trying to say he has the ability to watch things that he hates on television and then put it out of his mind, which is why he's calling another television show in the morning. As President of the United States, we could be doing something. As President of the United States, though, he calls more television talk show hosts to complain about what's being said about him personally before 9 a.m. than most people do all day long, to borrow from the Army. There, he called in, and I don't know, he had lots to cry about, and he was screaming about how I hate CNN, it's fake news, all these people, NBC, and I made them a fortune, by the way, with The Apprentice. I made them a fortune. I don't know how much he made for NBC, but certainly Mark Burnett got very rich off of it. And I don't know, he went completely bananas, and that's just the morning thing for Trump. He just watches television and calls it. I thought for a while that it might be Ronnie Jackson, you know, calling in with a hilarious prank. I understand he does a fantastic Donald Trump impression, and for a while I thought that must be what's going on here, and he's getting away with it, but it turns out it was really the president. Found time to handle that. By the way, new demands on his time coming up. I did see this morning a tweet indicating that Michael Cohen, who, by the way, the president took a few minutes during his call to Fox and Friends to say, I got nothing to do with the guy. The raid on his home, his apartment, was all about he's a businessman. He's got his own business. Had nothing to do with me. Nothing at all. Nothing except paying for Stormy Daniels, but whatever. And So he used the opportunity to distance himself from Michael Cohen. And then, yes, where was this tweet? Caitlin Collins had this one covering the White House for CNN is how she describes herself in her bio, in case you didn't know who Caitlin Collins is. I don't, because I actually don't watch CNN, unlike the president. Idiot me, I don't have time. He says he doesn't have time. He's the president of the United States. He manages to do it. But let's see, here we are. Here's her tweet. The leader of the free world, she's covering, actually, she's reacting to her own tweet, by the way, saying, incredibly significant line from the letter the lawyers who are representing President Trump in the Michael Cohen case filed in court today, which includes the, quote, our client will make himself available as needed to aid in our privilege review on his behalf. Caitlin noting the leader of the free world is potentially going to be spending his time sorting through the evidence that FBI agents seized when they raided his lawyer's office, or his coffee boy's office, as he would have it. Now, remind you that the old excuse for, or the old claim for why, the argument for why you couldn't sue or pursue criminal charges against the sitting president was that they had no time to defend themselves or to devote to the case. But in between executive time, calling Fox and Friends in the morning to talk about how he didn't watch CNN last night but really did, but he's developed the incredible ability to forget that he did. And all of this, plus golf on top of it all, and as you know, 7 square meals a day. And he's going to help his lawyers sort through evidence seized by FBI agents. It's a difficult enough task to sort through and do a privilege review, but it's also got it's a little bit of separation of powers implications of the president as potential defendant reviewing the FBI's evidence that they seized in order to make this case work. That's going to be pretty difficult. All right, let's see. Well, I guess I better get over to Greg here. I guess you got some any time issues today, Greg, or just lots going on in your home today as well?
Just hanging out, you know. You know how you hate watching State of the Union speeches?
I do.
And so you watch Twitter to see how it was going down, if you do it at all?
Right.
Well, I hate watching Fox and Friends, so I wasn't going to do it. And instead, I had MSNBC on, and I was listening to Michael Avenatti do live commentary.
Okay,
on Trump's comments, and it was fantastic.
Oh, that's great. So
I captured some of it. He's got this one tweet. He says, Michael Avenatti responds to Trump saying Michael Cohen represented him in the Stormy Daniels deal. He says, another gift from the heavens in this case. It's a hugely damaging admission by the president. I just want to send a shout out to Fox and Friends. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, Fox and Friends, their new tagline will be admissions against interest, which for the lawyer friends in the audience will make sense to you as evidentiary rules. But it's amazing what they are able to coax out of him. They don't even coax out. They're actually shifting in their seats, uncomfortable, like, I think you should hang up, Mr. President.
Well, they hung up on him.
Killing me. Yeah,
he wasn't going away.
They said,
kind of ran out of time. So
said,
I'm told they just
I'm sure
said,
you have
well,
work
I'm sure
to
you're
do.
busy, doing adultery and doing other things, so we got to get out of here.
You probably have lots of work to do.
But the other great part of it, of course, is that the ostensible reason for calling in is because it was Melania's birthday.
That's right. I forgot. I should just play the clip, but I don't have all of it. But
right.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's Melania's birthday, so my greatest gift to you, Melania, is you're married to me. And by the way, let me spend an hour talking about adultery. Right.
Yeah.
That's your birthday present.
It was and they asked him, so what'd you get her? A billionaire that he is. He says, well, I probably didn't get or something all that. And he realized, one, he's saying, I don't know if I got her anything because I have people who do that. And then I got her a very nice card, which is fine. I mean, even if you're a billionaire.
But, I'm sure what he wanted to say was, look, I shouldn't be telling you this because it's a surprise, but I got her Kyrgyzstan. I was talking with my good friend Vlad, and in exchange for a couple of things that we don't like to talk about, I got her Kyrgyzstan. She's going to love it.
Yeah.
The only problem is I can't give it to her yet because wrapping the darn thing takes just so much work.
I hate wrapping.
It's been taking me all week.
I'm with the president on that one. He and I are brothers. We have dragon energy, and I also hate rapping. So I feel it.
Totally
so he's got lots of time
and
now.
then of course that guy Macron from France, he kept telling me, don't waste all that stuff. It's not good for the planet to, waste all that wrapping paper and stuff. So I have a lot of problems. Being president is tough.
Right. And by the way, he held Macron's hand a lot more than Melania's, and it was almost her birthday.
Yeah, well, I guess because Macron has dandruff and Melania doesn't or something. I don't know. It's hard to figure out exactly what's going on. I think the important thing to get from the Fox and Friends interview, which you haven't already, like there's something wrong with you, is that Trump's words don't mean anything. He'll contradict himself like 15 times within the first 3 seconds, and the importance of that isn't that we didn't already know that. It's that if you were really seriously thinking that he hired Rudy Giuliani to negotiate a sit-down with Robert Mueller after watching that interview, maybe you should get another job.
Yeah, well, Giuliani certainly doesn't think so. Anything I can do to make sure that he doesn't talk to someone who's taking notes
about anything. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, it seems obvious to me that Giuliani's purpose is to give the PR of looking cooperative, so that when he fires Mueller or at the very least refuses to do the interview, Giuliani could say, "I was shocked at how recalcitrant and intransigent and stubborn they were. Here I was trying to cooperate, trying to bring this thing to a close, which the entire country wants, and they just wouldn't budge. They were awful. And so it's not our fault that we can't cooperate with them. They're just totally uncooperative."
It's been very rough out there. But, I've developed an ability, like the president, dragon energy and all, to ignore these things. So,
as you pointed out, Kyle Griffin kind of like, you only have to follow his feed and you know everything that's happening on the
Twitter.
internet. So he was following the Fox and Friends thing. He's got a couple of good ones here.
Okay.
We'll get to Ronnie Jackson. Trump says these are false accounts and they're trying to destroy a man. Sure. And he says John Tester's at fault. It was his fault for bringing out the allegations, and Tester's going to have a big price to pay in Montana, which voted for me by like 20 points.
Yeah, well, it's his fault for.
Thing is, 1 out of 10
pouring that gin down his throat.
Residents of Montana are veterans.
Yeah. Are they going to be upset about having
Chester's trying to fight for them, so I don't see it.
Yeah, also they know who he is. And they don't know Ronnie Jackson, I can tell you that. That
Trump,
contest is over.
Trump tells Fox and Friends, according to Kyle Griffin, he stayed overnight in Moscow, contradicting the claim in Comey's memo. I went to Russia for a day or two. Of course I stayed there. I never said I didn't stay there. And then he went off on a rant about how Comey's lying in his memos because Comey lied and said that Trump told Comey that he didn't stay there. And of course he did. And what's he talking about?
Yeah, right.
I did a great thing for the American people by firing him, Trump said.
Lordy, I hope there's tapes.
Exactly.
Well, good job, dummy.
And then there's the part about, I didn't catch this exactly, but it was something along the lines of I watched Chuck Todd and he was awful on the Sunday shows, but I never watch him because I never watch the Sunday shows.
I don't do that. Oh, I have developed. I think he was saying he's developed the ability to watch and then put it out of his mind and think
watch
he
but
didn't.
Not watch. Yeah.
I don't know what that. I'm not certain that's what he meant, but who could be certain about anything?
Right. And then he says Justice Department, which I try to stay away from, but at some point I won't. I mean, you have to realize that he would be an incredible. This isn't a perjury trap. This is a sanity trap that I think that Robert Mueller would have with him.
Yeah.
And of course his lawyers want him to have nothing to do with actually putting things down. But the thing is that if you go and do interviews like this, as Michael Avenatti points, and you're talking about a legal case, you don't have to be under oath. If one party says things that are damaging to the suit, they count.
Admissions.
Usually Avenatti says we don't have the ability to have this on tape or on film. But of course with Donald Trump we have a gift, and here it is.
Yeah, he loves to put this stuff on the record and on tape. And, evidentiary rules. By the way, everybody knows, has a general idea about hearsay and what it is and what it isn't, although they don't all know the legal definition.
I heard him say that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was right on the tape.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this would ordinarily, perhaps meet, I guess the fact that it's recorded and broadcast also helps. But yeah, admissions against interest when you're on the record saying, admitting to a crime or anything else that would be against your interest ordinarily, though it may be hearsay, it would be admissible nonetheless. And so calling Fox and Friends and admitting such things would be incredibly damaging if there were ever a court case. And his lawyers, if they're awake or working or not drunk or members of the bar or any of the above, any combination of those things, were probably tearing whatever hair they have left out or working on resigning. Giuliani, they brought him on because most of his hair's gone. So that keeps him young.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting in terms of all this. So let's get to Ronnie Jackson here. So I was reading a succession of news stories, which were kind of interesting. And the New York Times started with new allegations emerge against Ronnie Jackson as the White House digs in.
Yes.
And they're a little bit more serious than just the ones we were talking about yesterday. Again, let me just preface this. These are all alleged.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
These are things he allegedly did, and if I forget myself on the air and say he did this, I mean that these are the allegations.
Right, yes, absolutely.
Okay. So Ronnie Jackson, the White House physician nominated to lead the Veteran Affairs Department, provided, quote, such a large supply, end quote, of Percocet, a prescription opioid, to a White House military office staff member. He threw his own medical staff into a panic, quote unquote, when it could not account for the missing drugs, according to a summary of questionable deeds compiled by the Democratic staff of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. A nurse on his staff said Jackson had written himself prescriptions. When caught, he simply asked the physician assistant to provide him with the medication.
That's isn't that like that's probably number one on the no list.
Yeah, and that's, all of that's a whole lot worse than handing out Ambien on the plane.
Yes.
And at a Secret Service going away party, the doctor got intoxicated and wrecked a government vehicle, according to the summary. The 2-page document, distributed by committee Democrats, fleshes out 3 categories of accusations: prescription drug misuse, hostile work environment, and drunkenness that threatened to derail President Trump's nominee.
Drunkenness. It sounds so like 19th century, really.
Right. Committee staff members say the summary details the testimony of 23 current and former colleagues of Dr. Jackson, many of whom are still in the military. So those are fairly serious things. And then the next story was in the Washington Post, which was, Jackson thinking about what to do, hesitating about his next moves. And then the next thing, of course, is that Ronnie Jackson's statement on withdrawing from consideration, which he did early this morning as Veterans Affairs Secretary. The allegations against me are completely false and fabricated. But there's like 23 different people who said that, no, this actually happened. So we don't know. But he's gone. And Trump said, I'm going to get somebody in there. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I think he told Fox and Friends, but it'll be somebody who's politically skilled.
Not
he
me.
didn't say anything about administratively skilled.
Yeah, well, that's what they're supposed to be doing.
Which is the problem with this guy, even if none of this is true. Right? But as Armando pointed out, listen, if these things are true, if these allegations are anywhere close to being true, then it isn't just a question of him not being a VA secretary. Why is he the White House doctor?
Yes, and it was announced this morning. Well, I mean, for now, they say he'll continue as White House doctor. I think maybe by the end of the day, no. But
and then, and I pointed out to Armando, his license actually is from Virginia.
Right.
I actually gave you a screenshot. It expires at the end of May. This is public information. You can go to the Department of Health of any state and look this stuff up.
Yeah, it's far away from me.
It turns out that the usual process for complaints about a physician are to complain to the Department of Health or the Department of Public Health, or wherever it's called in your state.
I don't know.
In the state where the doctor has the license.
Yes.
And my point is that those allegations are serious enough to actually threaten his license and his livelihood.
I would say so, and that's my guess is that's why it was never reported to date. Now, of course, it being public, it will be hard to not report that. But I think people just said he's this kindly old, he's not that old or anything. He's a kindly guy who's in a job where really he can't do too much harm, even though handing out Ambien on the plane, maybe not a great idea, apparently common practice.
Yeah, that alone I wouldn't make me look one way or the other. It's not accepted practice, but that's not something you'd get a reprimand for that. You wouldn't necessarily get fired for that.
And so I think they just said let him do this job. It's ceremonial. Most of the presidents probably just said, I'll go to my own doctor for anything real. Once a year, this guy takes my blood pressure and weighs me. I don't care. Let him live out his life and get his pension and be on his way. I mean, minus, like, smashing government cars. I wouldn't necessarily look the other way on that one, but somebody did.
Well, presumably the job is a little bit more than ceremonial, right? If you travel with the president on foreign trips, the idea, I guess, would be is if the president wakes up with the worst headache he ever had in his life, in the middle of the night, then the White House doctor goes in and just makes sure that he's not having a stroke or an aneurysm or something serious. I mean, so there's something to the job, but that's why you have to be sober.
Well, yeah, you're supposed to be. Normally, I don't know whether they travel with more doctors than just him, but it would be good if he were sober. 2, of course, as you know, they just go to a temp agency and get a double for the president, and
right.
Just
and
like Dave.
Meanwhile, right, they go to
it is more than
a walk-in.
I think they treated it that way.
Primary care clinic, right?
Yeah,
like a Walmart or something like that, and just get it taken care of.
My guess is it's been a long time since the White House physician was, really traveling with a black bag in case something medically happened to the president. But, they have to have so they have an official there. But I have a feeling that this guy has been filling the duties ceremoniously and maybe the previous guy, too, since the two of them were both nuts, apparently.
Well, I don't know. I really don't know what the job is, honestly. You'd have to be there and actually...
I'm not. I'm just going to lie.
Yeah, but I just don't know. I'm not casting aspersions on what the job is.
I am
he
absolutely
is an emergency
doing the
room
wrong
doc,
thing
and it makes certain sense for to have somebody like that around.
Plus the hat. Have you seen it? It's very cool.
What's that?
The hat. It's fantastic. The scrambled eggs on the brim there.
Oh, that sort of thing. Yeah. Well, like I said the other day, he's an admiral, so therefore I'm surprised Trump didn't make him head of Department of Defense.
Right.
Because he's just as qualified as he would be to be, head of the VA. But in any case,
he did sing in the Navy.
You have these serious allegations, and then the fact that it involves Percocet and opioids just
not good.
Makes it even worse.
Bad timing for opioids, I would say. But well,
I mean, you already have a situation where Kellyanne Conway's in charge,
right? Oh, yeah.
And so now you have a guy who's doing exactly what makes it bad.
Right, giving out opioids to anybody who wanders by the office, even if you don't have a headache or whatever.
Right, and then if I'm understanding the allegation correctly,
recovery.
You can't be writing prescriptions for yourself.
No, I'm pretty sure that's out.
Now, I presume he did that to get a supply so then he could hand that out. But again, you can't do that.
He's just filling out prescription sheets to cash. Why? That doesn't work.
So there's no way with that allegation. And it's weird because I'm reading the subsequent news stories. And, well, the big thing is that he was so drunk that he crashed a car. And I'm thinking, no, the big thing is that he was involved with opioid distribution.
Yeah.
That's a way bigger thing. You don't understand. Everybody understands you can have a drink and then accidentally wreck the car, right? I mean, that's not great. As long as nobody got hurt, that's like typical Americana. But there is no way in 2018.
No way, it is.
It is. Right. But there's no way in 2018 you're going to get forgiven for distributing opioids.
No. That is odd. And I mean, like we were saying, Ambien, I don't know anything about the dangers of Ambien, if any. But the idea was, okay, people who are wired and need to get a night's sleep on a plane flight that makes a certain amount of sense. It's prescribed, or it's handed out as indicated, I suppose, minus the fact that he didn't do it right. But Percocet, I mean, my understanding, the only thing I remember, people who would have surgery and post-surgical, they would get these Percocets. Who needs Percocet at the White House?
Well, what's in Percocet?
Opium, I guess, but what?
Oxycodone and acetaminophen.
Okay. Acetaminophen,
nobody cares about the
acetaminophen,
but yes. Oxycodone is a opioid.
It's Rush Limbaugh's favorite.
Yeah.
And it cost him a hearing,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, but I don't know who, like, under what circumstances would you be giving Percocet to White House staffers? I think at some point I would say, if you're in serious pain, you need to leave.
From a technical, point of view, you don't give anything to anybody who's not your own patient, and then you have to document it in their chart. And so, what do you have a chart on everybody who's on the plane? I don't think so.
No, definitely not. But again, I hope he's not giving Percocets out on the plane, but maybe. I don't know. But I can't really
and
think
I promise you, having just been in the process of converting my electronic record, it would take you 3.5 weeks to document this.
There you are.
That app.
No wonder. Well, he has the time now. He will get. His workload looked to be increasing, but in fact, it will not.
So basically, I'm just looking at this, and one of the reasons I spent so much time talking about Ronnie Jackson yesterday is that he wasn't going to survive.
Yeah, well, so you want to get it all in there. So,
Yeah.
But he won't be on the show probably tomorrow.
Right. So whatever else is in the news here today, Michael
knows?
Cohen to invoke Fifth Amendment right in the Stormy Daniels case.
Right.
That's in addition to the fact that Trump was saying that I have nothing to do with his business. Therefore, to me, as a non-lawyer, Armando and you have to explain this. But if Donald Trump is on Fox and Friends saying that he has nothing to do with Michael Cohen's business, that means to me, okay, no client-lawyer privileges. There's no lawyer criminal privileges here that Trump can invoke.
Yes, except, well, like you were saying, he contradicts himself every minute. And wasn't it that he also used the appearance to say, he was representing me with respect to Stormy Daniels, but nothing else, or maybe only a little bit of my business.
Or maybe just a little real estate because
right.
I'm in it with Sean Hannity. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm saying here, but here I
Right.
am on Fox News saying it.
Right, not on Percocets or Ambien or anything.
Right. Anyway, so obviously the guy is incompetent. I don't mean mentally incompetent. I mean incompetent to do the job.
The president
and
the
there's
doctor.
no way that he should be on Fox and Friends doing this. As many people pointed out on Twitter this morning, I remember when we had a constitutional lawyer who was the president.
Yeah, that was fun. We should try that again.
Not long ago.
Yeah.
When we get back from the break, I got some new polling for you.
Okay, excellent. Polling is good. I imagine Ronnie Jackson down in the polls this morning. They're not polling on him, are they?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, he's from Virginia. He could run for office anytime. And you never know. He may announce.
We'll talk about Scott Pruitt, too.
Okay. He might not even be drunk. And he's still in trouble. Okay. We'll be right back after 2 minutes. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg Dworkin still with us and discussing the amazing fire hose of news today, as every day, really, with the special edition of Donald Trump calling into Fox and Friends and blathering out yet more news. I think I threatened in the Morning Post something stupid will happen between the time I set up my Morning Post and we hit the air. And indeed, it did. And that stupid thing that happened was Donald Trump, as President of the United States, has jeopardized all of his cases and the cases of those associated with him, including Michael Cohen, who will be in court today before Judge Kimber Wooden. Yes, there will be some consideration of the question of whether to appoint a special master or not, but whether we'll hear a decision on that today or not, I'm not real sure, but maybe.
My understanding of this whole mess here is that appointing a special master would have the optics of appearing to be more fair.
Yes.
But at the same time, even if done fairly, assuming that they can find somebody who has the ability to sort through this stuff electronically or otherwise.
Ronnie Jackson.
But I can just imagine a retired judge who doesn't know how to do email.
Right.
But
David
even if that happens, it would slow it down. And so, obviously, from my point of view, I want to get all of this out before the November elections.
Yes. Well, that would be helpful. We'll see what they have to say and follow along. And maybe, I don't think it's going to happen probably before we get off the air, but we'll be talking about it tomorrow, I guess.
Right. I mean, when you think about it, put yourself in the judge's shoes, right? I mean, the taint team, the team, the fact-finding team that Department of Justice would provide,
yes,
are experts at wire fraud and sophisticated RICO-style stuff. In other words, they know exactly what they're looking for.
Yes.
And, of course, the special masters would presumably be experts in the law and really be able to sort through client-attorney privilege and get it right. So, I mean, there's arguments to be made on both sides, I suppose. But I just want it done yesterday.
True. And
I'm not a lawyer. I don't have to worry about that.
I am certain that instructions to the special master will be pretty clear about the necessity for expedition, if you will.
But also expertise. If you're looking at something and you don't know what it is, maybe you should ask somebody.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what makes a master.
A special master.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know how that works, the special master part. I have a better sense of how it works on the taint team part, because that's been described well in the media.
I see.
And having never been under investigation at this level myself, I really don't know how it works.
Essentially all it is if you're worried at all about me, Judge Kimba Wood, presiding over each one of these decisions, we'll take it outside and let somebody else handle all of the questions of privilege about the documents and evidence seized, and then they'll come back. The decisions made and argued there, the issues will be settled one way or another by this other presiding judge, essentially, and then brought to me. And when you get back to me, all the evidentiary decisions will have been made, and we'll just begin the proceedings from there.
Right. I mean, rule of law is rule of law. She gets to decide. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying I'd like it done yesterday. Thank you very much.
Well, it might get the guy who used to do the FedEx commercials who can talk very quickly.
Yeah, I suppose. So here's some polling that might warm the cockles of your heart, if your heart has any cockles left after that Fox and Friends interview. Democrats lead in key GOP Senate races. This is from an Axios Survey Monkey poll, although I chose Taken Goddard's Political Wire for the summary.
Yes.
Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema, 51. Martha McSally, 42. Remember, she's the one that's supposed to have the strongest chance of winning.
Really?
Charlie Cook the other day was very blunt about it when he was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. He said, look, if the other two win, then Arizona's going blue. And if McSally wins, she's probably going to win. But this says Sinema actually is up 9 points.
All right.
Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema, Democrat, 51. Kelly Ward, 43. She's a nutcase that's attaching herself to Trump at the wrist and ankle. And then Arizona, Kyrsten Sinema, Democrat, 56. And Joe Arpaio, Republican, 32. Normally you'd look at that and say, well, I hope Arpaio wins, although after 2016 I am never saying that again.
Yes. Right. Well, I'm not going to hope for it. Now, are they splitting the crazy Trump-loving vote between what's her name and the second one?
Well, it's a heads-up thing. I don't have it in terms of a three-way and who's ahead there.
See.
I think McSally is going to be the likely nominee, but you never know.
Yeah. All right. Well, and she's the one she's the only one that's not completely Trump nuts.
Yes. Correct.
Okay.
Although she's trying to get closer, obviously, because everybody has to. She has to in order to win the primary.
Got to do that, sure.
In Nevada.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe. Jackie Rosen, Democrat, 50. Dean Heller, 44. Remember, the SurveyMonkey Axios poll it's a fairly neutral poll. If anything, leans a little Republican.
Leans a little monkey, I would say.
And then in Tennessee, Phil Bredesen, Democrat, 48. Marsha Blackburn, 47. That 1% different is Bob Corker's vote, since it's voting for Bredesen.
Yes, and on TV, when they report that one, it'll be so solid lead for Blackburn.
Mm-hmm. Here's another poll. This one is from Politico Morning Consult. Most voters say they haven't seen a pay boost from the tax law. More than half of registered voters say they haven't noticed an increase at all. Right. And the April 19th through 23rd, so it's right about tax day when people are focusing on this, suggests that Republicans' message about the benefits of the tax cut, which they are counting on to buoy their election fortunes in November, has not broken through. At the same time, those who said they have seen a pay increase are more likely to support Republicans in Congress who voted for the tax overhaul than Democrats who opposed it. But I don't know what that means. Are they voting for Republicans, therefore they're saying they see a pay increase and they're lying? Or are they seeing a pay increase, and because of that, all of a sudden they decided to not vote for the Democrat and then vote for the Republican? Can't really tell from this. The poll results were heavily colored by partisanship, says this article, with Republicans overwhelmingly supporting the law and Democrats opposing it. A plurality of independent voters supported it, even whether somebody noticed the pay bump appeared influenced by politics. See, the very same point I was trying to make here. Twice as many Republicans saying they had seen one as Democrats. Okay. Overall, 55% of those surveyed said they had not noticed an increase in their paychecks in the past several weeks. 22% said they had. The rest didn't know or had no opinion or didn't know how to look at their paycheck because now it's online and you can't really see it, a point we've made before. Right. Because people don't go looking for this normally.
I see. Yeah, you have
they just see what they know it's deposited in their account, but they don't pull their paycheck to look at it every time.
Yeah.
The stub. They look at the check. They don't look at the stub. They tear the stub off and they look at the check.
Right. Well, let's see. The Nevada poll that you mentioned. Did you say that was that Axios Survey Monkey?
Yeah, Axios Survey Monkey poll.
Okay, I just had there was a question from the audience about how reliable the polling on Heller was, and so I wanted to take a look at
Survey Monkey's. Pretty very very solid poll. It's all online. It's run by Mark Blumenthal, the old mystery pollster. Everybody who knows Daily Kos from 10 years ago knows that guy. So very, very reliable pollster. And John Cohen, who used to run the Washington Post poll.
And neither of them monkeys, but it was a funny name, and so, internet.
Right. Online poll. This is registered voters, April 2nd through 23rd, 2018.
Okay. There you have the methodology. So the Warlock gets to evaluate that himself. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you.
And so the way they interpret it is Democrats have a real shot at winning 2 of the 3 Senate seats here, which is Arizona and Nevada. They have a chance at Tennessee as well. It's a toss-up. And losing both the House and Senate to Democrats, they point out, would be a clear repudiation of Trump and his brand of republicanism. And Democrats have been clearly outperforming in the special election since Trump became president. By the way, there's a lot more analysis along the same vein of what we got yesterday. But Arizona 8 was really a big deal. To come within 5, it was actually a 5-point win in the end for the Republican, and Trump claimed it was a huge win. Huge,
of course.
Ginormous.
Yes. So, okay, actually, as the Daily Kos elections guys were saying, I think there hasn't been a close election in that district ever, really.
Ever, really. So that's absolutely ever, at least not since the district was created. So I think that is a big deal. And every sign, every indication is really pointing toward Democratic gains in the fall. Again, this isn't complacency. This isn't assuming it. You have to go out and do the work. Again, Charlie Cook on Meet the Press yesterday was saying it's interesting about wave elections because typically what happens is when you have a wave election, it's always bigger than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It starts out, you say, okay, this side really has the advantage. This side really has the advantage. And then the election is, oh, my gosh, I saw it coming, but I didn't see it was going to be this big. He said that typically is what happens in a wave election. And so Dave Wasserman's observation that there's something like 149 Republican seats in the House that are less Republican than Arizona 8 should cause everybody to reevaluate what's really a toss-up and what's not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be
and
looking
again, the funny thing about all this analysis, which is why I get annoyed with, when people say, well, Trump probably is going to get reelected or Trump may well get reelected. It's not that the fundamentals say that it's impossible. It's not that history says that it's impossible. We have a split between Republicans and Democrats, and fundamentals generally favor an incumbent. So I get all of that. But there's 2 things about that analysis which applies to the idea of a wave coming in the fall that also need to be kept in mind. One of them is that Trump truly is unique. He's different than other presidents. Mm-hmm. He's unqualified. Yes. He's a moron, but also his unfavorables are incredibly high. Democrats hate him. Yes. They loathe him with the power of 1,000 suns, and the severe dislike that one can pick up in these polls is double the strong approval. So that's one thing. Okay, and the other thing is that all of this analysis always assumes if everything stays the same, and if the election were held today. Well, things are not staying the same. Just look at the Michael Cohen stuff that's happening, and the Robert Mueller things that are going to happen, and I think this somebody pointed out this was like the 26th not cabinet, but 26th appointment that Trump tried to get through that was turned down. Or didn't work, or something along those lines. I'm not sure if that's we tried and failed, or we tried, succeeded, and then we had to remove him like Tom Price. But the fact of the matter is, this builds up over time, and now we got another one, Scott Pruitt, who's going to the Hill today to testify.
Maybe this will be the Hill he dies
and Republicans are hoping he does badly so they can get rid of him.
Yeah, well, that'll help make it go poorly if both sides are actually out to get you.
But the point is that between the corruption in the cabinet, the emoluments, other lawsuits, the Stormy Daniels stuff, not in a vacuum, but just in context with everything else, plus the Mueller probe, that's on the domestic political side. And then you have world affairs from Iran to North Korea to the thing that you haven't seen coming, but there it is, as well as actual relationship with the Russians. And there's no way you could say that, well, by November it's going to be exactly the way it is right now. 6 months is an awfully long time. There's a lot that can go wrong with the Trump administration between now and then. And it isn't as if every single time something bad happens, you go, okay, that's the turning point. That's as dumb as saying, okay, he finally pivoted and now he's president. It's that you get this accumulation of things that weigh on you. And for most Americans not paying attention to politics, you look at Trump's approval ratings, and they're basically rock steady. Everybody's already made up his mind about him. There's not going to be a lot of movement there. But the more that it's in your face with stuff like Ronnie Jackson or with Scott Pruitt, as you get closer to the voting booth, plus the tariffs and the effects on soybeans and pork belly futures, that sort of thing, if you happen to be a farmer in the Midwest or whatever it is that's affecting you, you take that in with the voting booth, and you generally, if you're disgruntled about it, then you vote on the party who's not in power.
Yeah, or maybe you don't get out of bed at all because you're tired from all the winning. And
yeah, if you're a Trump supporter, right.
And you don't vote.
So, no, it's not going to stay the same. And it looks pretty good right now, but actually what I'm saying is I expect it to look even better then.
Yeah, well, that's there's something for our wave metaphor. All the energy in building the wave is below the surface at the moment.
Right.
And it's only when it gets close to shore that it surfaces.
So you could see it.
Well, it has to happen when you get closer to the shore. The water gets shallower. It's make or break time, and the energy comes out.
Great analogy. I love it. So with that, that's my roundup for today, and you got the rest of the show. You're on your own, bud. Sorry.
All right. Oh, well, I guess so. All right. Well, I'll find something, I think, to talk about.
There might be something to talk about. I mean, maybe he went back on Fox News and he did another hour.
That's possibly
while we were talking.
The case. I wouldn't know at this point. I think the other option is I just give out Ambien, and we all just take the rest of the day off. Percocet for everybody.
Ambien. I just do it myself.
Okay. Wow. Well, what a day. The White House doctor. Oh, I didn't see anywhere. I got to search the news. I saw, I guess, unconfirmed reports yesterday that said that it was the Wall Street Journal that had gotten a hold of this information, leaked documents, I guess, from what was alleged to be the actual results of his physical exam that I guess Ronnie Jackson either conducted himself or was drinking in the other room while it was going on. I don't know, but I don't have access to the Wall Street Journal. But apparently the word was that the whole weight thing, about 50 pounds off the mark, and his blood pressure through the roof, cholesterol elevated, not terrible, but I haven't seen that confirmed yet, and If you happen to see anything in the Wall Street Journal about that,
I'll send it to you. Here's a Jake Tapper just a couple of seconds ago.
Oh, okay.
White House signals Rear Admiral Jackson will remain in his job despite allegations. Big questions remain. Are the charges accurate? If so, how did he survive the Obama-Trump years until now? Mm-hmm. If not, how and why did these allegations happen? These are all great questions, and I think they should be asked because it affects his career, not just whether or not he's going to be VA secretary. So with that, I'll look up a few things about the Wall Street Journal, send them over to you if I find them.
All right.
And I will talk to you on Monday.
Okay. Thanks very much. Have a good weekend. Don't crash any government cars, and you'll be in good shape. Maybe you can be the White House physician.
Right. I think the job really requires a great deal of finessemanship, which so far the Trump administration has not shown. Okay. So with that, take care, and I'll talk to you Monday.
Okay, thanks very much, Greg. Appreciate it. And, looking forward to finding out one way or the other. And I guess the only way we would find out that it wasn't the case is if we can't find anything in print somewhere verifiable, and then we'll say, yeah. I mean, it had the look last night, as I was seeing it on Twitter, of baseless speculation / rumor. But I don't know what to tell you. But if you searched around on Twitter for it, you would. Let's do that, and then I can tell you what's going on. But I got to warn you that I didn't see anything that convinced me that it was real. But now I'm so curious that I wanted to go and take a look. So Wall Street Journal had this alleged leak. Here we are. I just see a bunch of people passing around the same thing, but no links to anything that I can use to verify it. And then there was some variance in the numbers from tweet to tweet, and so that gave me some pause too. But the leak was, the story was, breaking news from WSJ, which is we take to be Wall Street Journal, but then again, because it hasn't been verified, I don't know. Leaked documents from Walter Reed Hospital shows POTUS, they use his at POTUS Twitter address here, that Trump's weight is 289 pounds, which is certainly appears to me to be a lot closer to the mark. 50 pounds, by the way, around 50 pounds. Not around, but round 50 pounds higher than reported. Remember, of course, they pegged his weight at 239 because that was the highest weight they could give him without classifying him as obese, which, carries some weight. Duh. But it brings with it some implications, not all of which are fair, but, health issues being what they are. You don't want to be obese at 71. You don't want to be obese at any time if you can help it. The older you get, hopefully, I guess everybody knows that the worse the implications for your long-term health. I'm not a doctor, but I think that's probably true. So weight, 289 pounds. Blood pressure. I've never understood blood pressure numbers. I had to ask around to find out. Is that horrible? Blood pressure, as reported, 154/91, which I think is kind of maybe through the roof. But hey, you never know. He may have white coat syndrome and, show an elevated blood pressure and heart rate when he's under examination. The guy was a high-ranking government official and everything, and maybe might be drunk, and that would make me a little nervous too. Cholesterol, 237, which is elevated, I think. I know a little bit, I guess, about that. Elevated, but not as horrible as you would think with somebody with his diet and, high weight. So maybe he's on cholesterol drugs at the moment, which I think would be indicated, and it might be keeping things under control. So success there. He asked his doctor about Zocor or something like that at some point. Dan Reeves doing my favorite commercial for Zocor. I don't care one way or another about Zocor, or for that matter, Dan Reeves either. I thought his accent was really smooth in that commercial. Let's see. Some updates from Greg. He says, I find nothing in the Wall Street Journal to point to. And so my guess is no. I mean, honestly, I guess if by the end of the day we haven't seen that from an authoritative source linked to something, then I would say, I mean, it sounds about right, but that's all. It might just be somebody's idea of a guess or a hoax or whatever. Let's see. Oh, yeah, look at this. Here's something that says, whose tweet is this? I don't know. Here's the tweet, though, and we'll look it up and see. Is that somebody I know? It is not. But it says, I, among others, have been retweeting this breaking news from Wall Street Journal, leaked documents, etc., etc. Supposed story out about Trump's health that I am completely unable to confirm. My advice is to take it as satire, not fact, unless someone can confirm it as true. So I'm in agreement with my hero. How do you like that? M-I-H-E-R-O. And all right, so we're on the same page there. I would say that's probably the best advice. I'm pretty sure that that's probably closer to his real weight, but yeah, as far as it being in the Wall Street Journal, no, not to date. Though they may be holding it for later publication or whatever, but I don't know why they would let that leak and not be out with that exclusive scoop anytime soon. All right, well, thanks, Greg, for doing the research on that one. And we'll hold off then on saying the president weighs 289 pounds. Don't say it. There, I'm doing pretty good with it, right? All right, let's see. Other things that we can touch on before our break that are verifiable because they have been in the news, and that's why I put them in pocket. Let's see. Best running summary I've seen so far of what the president was blathering about this morning, or at least on the early side, came from Sahil Kapoor, national political reporter for Bloomberg News, and he took a couple of these clips and put together a thread. President Trump is phoning in to Fox and Friends right now, as he phones in most of his presidency. Let's see. He said, these are false accusations, Trump says, of the allegations against Ronnie Jackson. They're trying to destroy a man. He's doing a pretty good job of it on his own, though. Trump says he has an idea of who he'll nominate for VA secretary, as Greg said, but won't reveal it yet. Somebody with political capability, which, good news, maybe. Trump goes after Tester, the ranking Democrat on the Senate VA committee over the Ronnie Jackson situation. John Tester has a big price to pay in Montana. Trump also says regarding Michael Cohen pleading the fifth, good person. This doesn't have to do with me. Michael is a businessman. Now it's starting to slip into Godfather. Michael is a businessman. He's got a business. He also practices law. I have many attorneys. I'm not involved. Okay. Then he goes on to discuss the Trump-Kanye West love fest. He's got good taste. He's smart. And let's see. Oh, yes, this one I thought was interesting, too. Trump says, people don't realize, I don't know under what context, people don't realize that in the Civil War, it was Republicans who were, as Sahil puts it, for African Americans, and that Lincoln was a Republican. And he puts in parentheses, people do realize this. And yeah, they kind of do. This is the first Republican president. That was the whole premise of founding the Republican Party. But, you know, that's Trump's code for I just learned, is when he says, people don't realize, because I didn't realize, and I'm a people. So there you go. And that's the only way he knows that people don't realize this. People do realize it. It's basic fact about America that you probably learned before you were at a grade school, but okay. And Kylie Joy Gray, quoting him more fully, I guess the actual quote from the interview, the blathering over the telephone was, people don't realize if you go back to the Civil War, it was Republicans who did the thing. In other words, I think he was thinking of the Emancipation Proclamation, which is, again, sort of skipping around a little bit in history, and it wouldn't be entirely correct to say it was Republican platform position to say, yes, we'll emancipate the slaves, though, you know, circumstances warranted it, certainly, but he can't remember. It starts with an E. People don't realize if you go back to the Civil War, it was Republicans who did the thing. The thing. What? Fought the war, opposed slavery. But it was a thing. It was like a proclamation. The Emoluments Proclamation. That's it. E-word. Everybody knows that. People don't realize that it was Republicans who did the emoluments. Well, we do realize that now, and of course you meant emancipation, and yeah, I kind of heard about that one already, but thanks for filling me in. Let's see, there's a little bit more here. I didn't realize this was happening. Asked about Shania Twain. Okay, I did see her name flash by in the last couple of days. Did she say, I think she said something positive about Trump, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it was negative because he pivots to bragging about his electoral college victory. The Fox and Friends hosts keep trying to stop him and move on, but he persists. Ooh, he persists. Get it? Trump says he's looking at 3 or 4 possible days and 5 locations to meet with Kim Jong-un. Doesn't elaborate. Spending an awful lot of time on that one. And after Trump goes off on the FBI's leadership under Comey as crooked, Fox and Friends ends the interview saying they could talk to him all day, but that he probably has work to do. And, well, that's nice. I'm glad he's getting down to that. Let's see. Other piece of news here. I grabbed this last night from TPM. Just thought I'd bring us up to date on this one. I recall this coming up via tweet yesterday, and then it was contradicted a little bit later in the day. I think we left it as far as mentions on the air that Jeff Sessions was at the time unsure whether he would recuse himself from the Michael Cohen probe, and that I concluded that he probably would not because he knew he would get fired if he did. And then I think news broke, possibly, maybe, rumor broke over Twitter that he was, in fact, recusing himself from it. And I found that rather amazing, except now we are left in the dark. As it's reported by Tierney Sneed over at TPM, Sessions won't say whether he's recused from the Michael Cohen probe. Apparently, that's not something that he feels like he needs to clarify at all, although the rest of the world might feel differently. And it might even be a different story by now. I haven't followed up. We'll have to check the news during our 1-minute break here and see if there have been any further developments on that, and then tell you what else everybody's getting mixed signals about after this break. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Time to catch up with things. I was able to figure out, at least in that 1 minute, that yes, the current state of things, I have not seen an update that changes things. The current state of affairs with Sessions on the Cohen angle on the case, or the Cohen case, is that he won't say one way or another whether he's recusing himself, which is pretty amazing. Let me take a look at Tierney Sneed's write-up here for just a second. Citing Justice Department policy not to confirm or discuss details of investigations, and I don't know if that really falls under that category or not, Attorney General Jeff Sessions declined to say Wednesday whether he has recused himself from the federal probe into President Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. The best answer for me, having given it some thought, is to say I should not announce that. Sessions told Senator Patrick Leahy, Democrat of Vermont, of course, who asked the Attorney General whether he was recused at an appropriations subcommittee hearing. But of course it was the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee hearing, and so therefore the wrong article there. But okay. Also maybe not really. Well, it's not an improper forum for it. If it's the DOJ and related subcommittee, appropriations subcommittee hearing, it's just an inappropriate answer. Of course, he's correct. The best answer for him, having given it some thought, is that he shouldn't say anything, because if he is recusing himself, Trump will fire him. And if he's not recusing himself, everyone else will want to impeach him. So the best answer for him is to not say. But I don't think that it would be it would be surprising if the Justice Department policy against discussing details of ongoing investigations covered the question of whether or not a particular individual official has recused himself from consideration of the case. I doubt that very highly. But I don't doubt that he thinks that the best answer to give for him is to not answer. Sessions assured Leahy that he had not violated his recusal obligations. Later in the hearing, Senator Chris Coons asked Sessions if he would recuse himself from the Cohen probe if he discovered any connection between it and the Russian investigation or anything else related to the 2016 election. Yes, Sessions said. So he's willing to say that, and that could just get him fired all by itself. Cohen has been under months-long federal grand jury investigation, prosecutors in Manhattan revealed in court filings having to do with the legal dispute over a raid on Cohen's home, office, and hotel room earlier this month. Just to bring you up to speed on what's happening today. Sessions is recused from overseeing, well, you know what he's recused for. Don't know if there's, I think that's really about it. Late update at the bottom here. This story has been updated to include his response to the question from Senator Coons. So that's the latest that I have available on that front. And I did look up what was going on in New York today that Armando was hinting at. I have yesterday's entry in the New York Post, since it's happening up in New York. Let's take a look at the local tabs on that one. Judge Mull's special master to handle documents seized from Trump lawyer. Maybe that'll give some explanation, some background on that question. Manhattan federal judge Kimba Wood today ordered a new hearing to help her decide whether to appoint a special master to handle documents seized in the government's criminal probe of President Trump's personal lawyer / coffee boy. Wood said she wants lawyers for Trump's longtime lawyers for the lawyer, Michael Cohen, to appear in her courtroom at noon on Thursday to discuss the matter. So it won't happen until we're off the air. We'll check in on it perhaps tomorrow. Also present will be lawyers for Trump and the Trump Organization, whatever that is, who also have asked to have a say in how the feds handle documents seized in an FBI raid on Cohen's office, hotel room, and residence. Cohen's lawyers have complained that the feds seized protected documents, including Cohen's communications with Trump and at least two other clients. The others, Brody and Hannity. They have asked for they're the ones who have asked for a court-appointed special master to take over a review of the documents from Manhattan federal prosecutors investigating Cohen's financial dealings, including $130,000 in hush money the lawyer paid to porn star Stormy Daniels, who claims she had an affair with Trump. Specifically, Wood wants to know what resources the parties have to help a special master, if one is appointed, to weed out documents protected by attorney-client privilege. Cohen, Trump, and the Trump Organization are expected to outline their, quote, resources in writing by close of business Wednesday. That would have been yesterday. In addition to Trump, Cohen's clients included Republican National Committee fundraiser Elliot Brody and Fox News host Sean Hannity. Cohen's lawyers were forced to admit at their last court date on the matter. By the way, I count that as evidence of collusion, by the way. The guy has three clients: the president, one of the chief fundraisers for the Republican National Committee, and one of the chief spokesperson for the Republicans in this country, Sean Hannity. And the whole idea is that there was some kind of, the whole idea of the heart of the investigation, of course, is that there was collusion with Russia. But they might as well look and find out if there was collusion with the Fox News network as well. And I think it's pretty obvious that there was, but that's probably a more difficult case to lay out. And so therefore, I don't think that's really a focus of the thing. But it is interesting that Michael Cohen, of all lawyers in the world, would draw a guy down to three clients: the president, chief fundraiser for the RNC, and chief mouthpiece for Republicans in the United States of America, Sean Hannity. Okay. Brody resigned from his post after admitting that Cohen arranged a $1.6 million payment to a former Playboy model whom he had impregnated. Way to lay it out bluntly there, New York Post. Hannity has denied that Cohen has ever worked at his lawyer, aside from providing advice on real estate transactions, because Sean Hannity, of course, an aspiring slumlord, and he thought he might as well hire this one particular lawyer. So, yes, the filing by the end of business yesterday on what resources the parties have to help a special master sort through the evidence seized by the FBI is basically that letter that we cited earlier. The special resource that they bring to the table in particular is that they have access to the President of the United States and can ask him What do you think should happen with these documents? And that's spectacular, really, all by itself. So we'll see how that one goes. Armando, you're commenting on the side here. Are we heading down into something? He says, Cohen thing is interesting. In essence, he has one client now, Brody, for one matter, the hush deal. That's it. I guess that's right. If the president is, although the president is giving mixed signals about whether or not he is Cohen's client at all in anything. But on TV this morning, he said, yeah, sure, he represented me in the Stormy Daniels thing. Of course, he has previously denied that there was a Stormy Daniels thing, so that's problematic too. Hannity says, Cohen's not my lawyer. Brody is the only one who hasn't said anything one way or the other about whether or not Cohen is really his lawyer. And all he's got is the $1.6 million payment to the Playboy model he impregnated. So, okay. We will see where we are. Oh, and more notes here. Okay. Trump says that Cohen was his lawyer on the Stormy Daniels thing, but that's over, whatever that means. Okay. And Hannity says no. So it's up to Brody to still say, no, he's not my lawyer either. And then we'll have a real mess on our hands. Is there any more question in people's minds about what a special master actually is? Should we? I don't know if we need to necessarily spend any time on that one, but I mean, we could, or you could. Quite honestly, Wikipedia will tell you, I'm sure, a pretty good explanation of special masters and what they do. And I've seen them appointed in a number of, wide variety of contexts. And I guess they, like we said, the optics of fairness, I guess, could be preserved that way if there was a judge reviewing what could fall under privilege and therefore be inadmissible and what would not, rather than having the FBI do it, the defendant not trusting the FBI particularly, but find me the defendant who does, quite honestly, and then you'll really have something. So nothing terribly different there. Let's continue to comb through what's in pocket today. Let's see, we have that New York Times, the dry recitation of the new allegations against Ronnie Jackson, but we're up to speed on those. How about this one? If you've been on Daily Kos this morning, and I recommend that you do spend some time there, you would have seen Eric Lewis diarying this one last night based on reports from Politico, but I like his headline here. Bannon, remember him? Bannon ordered Cambridge Analytica, remember them, to test Putin messaging as far back as 2014. And it's a short diary, and based on the report from Politico and a tweet from Chris Wiley, the pink-haired programmer who, of course, has been out and about as whistleblower on the formation of and initial operations of Cambridge Analytica. He tweeting that he had just finished a 5-hour session with the U.S. House Intelligence Committee, for whatever that's worth. Very thorough questions, he says, from Adam Schiff and committee members. So that's, okay. So he was more impressed with the Democrats on that committee than the Republicans. The report from Politico is available here. Let's jump out there and grab this one. Their headline for the piece, Chris Wiley, it's going to take us some time to open this thing up, eh? All right, dragging your feet. Wiley to House Dems. Bannon ordered Putin messaging tests by Ashley Gold. Let's take a quick look at that, shall we? Former Trump campaign CEO and White House chief strategist Steve Bannon ordered Cambridge Analytica. Can he order them to do anything? Maybe. Cambridge Analytica staff to test messaging around Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian expansion in 2014. Cambridge Analytica whistleblower Christopher Wiley told House Democrats this week. This opens up another interesting front in the whole tangle, I guess. Steve Bannon in 2014, of course, is not on board with the Trump campaign officially, like in any documented way. And in fact, Donald Trump in 2014 has not not officially announced his intention to run for president anyway. But of course, we've known for a long time that he had been considering it. He'd been toying with it for decades, really, at that point, but only in recent years a little bit more seriously. But the idea in 2014 for most of the public that, one, Trump was serious and would be running, two, would win, of course. That took us a long time to understand. But that Steve Bannon, editor, publisher, whatever he would call himself, of Breitbart News, that he was at all involved in anything Trump at that point would have come as a surprise. And, I mean, I guess there's nothing standing in the way of an association at the same time with Cambridge Analytica. But of course, he was on the board there, and he had, coaxed the Mercers into underwriting the whole operation. In other words, in 2014, they had a game plan in place about how to manipulate public opinion and the election and social media with the idea in mind that they would elect Donald Trump as president. And people plan running for and winning the presidency in advance all the time. It's just really interesting. And of course, the fact that all this was going on while he was ostensibly heading up what was purporting to be a genuine news operation is pretty amazing. I mean, I just think about all the times that our paper of record and others have refused to run a story that they knew and had verified for fear of, say, impacting the election outcome. Or we got to maintain the optics of being fair and balanced, and so therefore, it would be unseemly, for instance, for any political reporters at the Washington Post or the editors of the Washington Post or the owners of the Washington Post to say something like, yeah, I think on my own time, in my spare time, I am going to see if I can plot out how to manipulate the election and social media such that a presidential campaign, which I plan to manage and head, so that they can pull off a miraculous win against all odds, despite losing the popular vote by 3 to 5 million, whatever the number ended up being, and being in collusion with a foreign power to do it. That would be bad news for anybody that wanted to present themselves as journalists. But then again, we all know that the Breitbart claims to be journalists was a joke from the beginning. But I don't know. There's still people out there at the paper of record and elsewhere who say things like, well, they're partisan, but, as a publication, but they're serious journalists. Hopefully that's over with. Anyway, let's read through the rest of this piece here because it sounds very interesting. And it's not that long. It was, where were we? Oh, yes. Okay. So back in 2014, Chris Wiley says, Bannon orders Cambridge Analytica staff to test messaging around Putin and the Russian expansion into Crimea. It was the only foreign issue, or foreign leader, I should say, being tested at the time I was there, Wiley told Democrats on the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, according to excerpts the lawmakers released today, drawn from a Tuesday briefing with Wiley. Under Bannon's instruction, the firm discussed Putin with focus groups and was, quote, also testing images of Vladimir Putin and asking questions about Russian expansion in Eastern Europe, Wiley said. So I guess it wasn't that he was testifying to the Oversight Committee, but rather speaking to a gathering of Democrats from the Judiciary and Oversight Committees in some sort of, I don't know what. I don't know, what do they term it other than, say, a gathering of these folks. So it wasn't a committee meeting or testimony, I guess, in any sense then. Neither Bannon nor a White House spokesperson immediately responded to a request for comment. Wiley told media outlets in March that Bannon had Cambridge Analytica test the phrases build the wall and drain the swamp in 2014, long before Donald Trump adopted them as rallying cries. Interesting, too. They're not particularly innovative or inventive slogans, of course, but and you shouldn't credit Donald Trump to any extent, I guess, with coming up with them. They were handed to him like a campaign in a box, and he just read the script. Wiley was a source for news reports indicating Cambridge Analytica improperly obtained data on tens of millions of Facebook users. He's briefing Democrats from the House Intelligence Committee today. I think that was actually yesterday. Wiley also said Cambridge Analytica was a U.S. pass-through company with none of its own staff. All of its work was done by UK-based SCL Group, according to Wiley, who added that Bannon said he wanted to use Cambridge Analytica to, quote, discourage specific groups of people from voting, including people likely to vote Democratic. He said Michael Flynn, the notorious spy in our minds, the former Trump national security advisor, was a consultant for Cambridge Analytica at one point. Bannon did not care whether information spread by Cambridge Analytica was incorrect, Wiley said, because he was trying to win a, quote, culture war. He called Cambridge Analytica a, quote, full-service propaganda machine, unquote. Very interesting, and of course, why care whether the information was false or incorrect if you're trying to win a culture war? Of course, if you're trying to win a culture war in favor of a culture that would include truth and honesty and democracy and all of that crap, then, maybe you would care whether the information is correct or incorrect. But okay, what that means is to the extent that Bannon believes he's involved in a culture war, he is on the side of the culture that doesn't care about truth. And that's basically a pretty good overlap in many cases with gun culture. So all the culture people can stick together on that one. And in my mind, you all own one another. So terrific. All right, let's see. What else can we bring up in order to catch up with events? I can tell you this. I don't know or completely understand what is happening with Joy Reid. I am aware of the story. I am aware of the idea at the root of the story, which is that somebody had discovered that some number of years ago, and it's alleged to be 10 or more, I guess, discovered what were alleged to be homophobic posts on her blog from way back when. And I don't even know what blog. I mean, she was running a personal blog at the time. And the claim then is from Joy Reid is that these blog posts were placed there, that her blog was hacked, and they were placed there by some other outside actor, and that they were not her words. And, well, I don't know. These days, of course, we're open to accusations about hacking and even some rather incredible hacking. But this one, I think, struck a lot of people as maybe not that reliable a claim, because this is kind of odd. But then, the real problem was that I guess somebody checked the Wayback Machine, the Internet Archives, and apparently the disputed posts do appear in what, I guess, just to be totally fair about everything, or to keep with the legal language, is purported to be what was purported to be the contemporaneous scans of her blog page at the time. So, I mean, either they just really were old posts of hers and were documented as such by the Internet Wayback, the Internet Archives Wayback Machine correctly, or somebody was at least sophisticated enough to say, well, if I'm going to pull this off as a hack, if I'm going to hack Joy Reid's blog and plant old posts that are, what are purported to be old posts that would incriminate her in some way, or, implicate her in some way, then I know that the first stop for people checking on whether or not they were really old posts or whether they were hacked and put in there would be to check the Internet Archives Wayback Machine. And so I'll hack that too and place them there. Well, that does, add a layer to it that tends to strain credibility a little bit, right? And then the Internet Archives folks said, yeah, we have no indication that there's been any infiltration of our archives either, so that's like a bit of a long shot. And then, of course, well, then you get into those weird allegations that include things like, well, they've learned to hack their way in and get back out without leaving a trace behind, in which case, you're entering the realm of magical claims, essentially. But I guess it's possible. I just don't know enough about the tech to be able to decide whether or not hackers have really finally developed the ability to get in and out undetected. But people who have claimed for a long time that it was possible on hacking, say, voting machines in the polling places and to do so without leaving a trace behind. Curiously, there have been a number of people that I've seen make claims like that, and who might also perhaps consider themselves internal Democratic Party or liberal-leaning opponents, rivals of Joy Reid and her wing of the party. So that would be, of course, inexplicable. But then there are plenty of people who are black box voting curious, and who are, I mean, this breaks down to a question of rivalries between, yes, still stemming from the 2016 primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And that's why I didn't really want to get off into that subject. But it's out there and acknowledged. And maybe if some of you have some specifics to add to it from a position of expertise, that would be helpful in straightening things out if they don't straighten themselves out in the next couple of days. But anyway, it's out there, and I'm sorry to hear that we're at this point. All right, let's see. Catching up on other comments. What have we here? All right, let's see. Matthew Rigdon commenting, if Ronnie Jackson loses his medical license, is that process public record, or do you just not find him in the state database anymore? Good question. That'll be one we'll have to have Greg address at some point. The Warlock telling me what was up with Shania Twain. She said she would have voted for Trump. But for what? She didn't vote at all? Here's the Twain story from People Magazine. Thank you, Warlock. Just, might as well keep up to date. I hope this video doesn't start playing. There she is. Shania Twain apologizes after saying she would have voted for Trump. Is she apologizing for saying that or for not voting? I wonder. Okay, let's see. Shania Twain is opening up about her political views in an interview with The Guardian. The Canadian... She's Canadian? I had no idea. I think I'm behind the times on that one. Congratulations, Canada. Revealed that she would have voted for Donald Trump. That's why she didn't vote for Donald Trump. She's Canadian. No wonder. That makes much more sense. She would have voted for Donald Trump in the 2016 election just as well then that she is Canadian. Congratulations. You might want to give that back, but okay. Saying she appreciates what she describes as the president's sometimes controversial honesty. Duh. I would have voted for him because even though he was offensive, he seemed honest. Oh, my Lord. Do you want straight or polite? Not that you shouldn't be able to have both. If I were voting, I just don't want BS, is what she basically said. Okay, well, you're not voting. Is she an American citizen now? Maybe that would did she not vote anyway, or she's still Canadian? It does say the Canadian singer, but originally Canadian or currently. Continued Twain to The Guardian. I would have voted for a feeling that it was transparent, and politics has a reputation of not being that, right? I don't know. That is not smart. Fans quickly flocked to social media to react to the news. Lots out there in the way of tweets. The singer has since issued a statement to people about her comments saying, I would like to apologize to anybody I have offended. Oh boy. In a recent interview with The Guardian relating to the American president. The question caught me off guard. As a Canadian, I regret answering this unexpected question without giving my response more context. I am passionately against discrimination of any kind. Not very, though. And hope it's clear from the choices I have made, I guess staying Canadian was helpful in this case, and the people I stand with, that I do not hold any common moral beliefs with the current president, which is really why you should not. If you don't hold any common moral beliefs with the guy, don't say you're going to vote for him. All right, so this is an awfully dumb situation and, kind of a dumb answer. All right, I can forgive her about that one because who gives a good about that anyway? And almost time for a break. Let's see. Armando notes this before we exit for the moment. DOJ I imagine you mean filed already rather than field already. Filed already in the Cohen case. Okay, so that's good, and we'll get up. We won't hear any of the discussion about it though on the show unless you've been able to digest this thing already, or if the materials are available. But once again, that hearing doesn't get away until noon. All right, one more segment to go. We'll return with another news roundup and try and sew it all back together again in 2 minutes. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and man, I don't know where to go for the last half hour. There's too much here. I got roundup stuff. I got explosive stuff. I'm going to start with the explosive stuff. Why not? Maybe that'll keep us awake for the rest. I took them in Ambien at the beginning of the show, and it was probably a mistake. Raw Story has this. Travis Geddes has put this one together. Did this happen on television today? Michael Avenatti is back at it, and that guy's tearing it up, by the way, on TV and elsewhere. Of course, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, you know what? Before I do that, and before I shift gears, let me give some attention to this reminder that I got from Kate Sherrill, and she was reminding me of this story yesterday, and it was her tweet that convinced me that I do need to at least address this. And then I forgot to make the major point, which one of her messages was making. And this, I guess, some evidence that weighs in favor of, and it is a little bit, I guess you could just dismiss it outright. I don't really know what the traffic on the blog was like, but the posts in question, she says, the posts in question, the allegedly homophobic, but I haven't read them. Not hard to imagine, what sort of material might be in them. One that an editor, she says, who has edited her writings for nearly 2 decades, says they are not in her voice. That's one that's, that could be apparent to you, maybe not. Not really super easy to, prove definitively one way or the other. But this one struck me. The posts in question have no comments. While, as Kate says, all of Joy's other blog posts have many comments, and I'm sure that that's true. Although, going back in 10 years, who knows what the traffic at her blog was like. And certainly I have plenty of posts out there that have no comments, and not even just including the radio ones. The radio ones almost get no comments. It's just, look, we're going on the air. What comment are you going to make? But I have substantive posts in the past that, depending on which blog I posted them on, also have no comments. But it would be curious if all of the ones in question had none and everything around it had dozens of comments. I would think that if you had a popular blog that was netting dozens or hundreds even of comments on each post, that in a democratic, political blog, if you made comments that were homophobic, that would draw comment. But the fact that these didn't, although, I don't know. I've seen no forensic analysis, and I suppose if all the comments were negative, which you would think they would be if the posts themselves were homophobic, that a vindictive blog writer might then delete those comments. I don't know, but that's what's out there. I'd say that probably weighs pretty heavily if, in fact, it is the case that it was a highly trafficked blog. Let's see. Matthew Rigdon has some more comments on that one, which is, let's see, don't know what they were using as their CMS, but it's not uncommon for a system to let you turn comments off for a particular post. There is that, of course. Seeing no comments for this post doesn't prove it's fake. So I think a lot of this stuff is still up in the air. I got the spinning pinwheel of death here now, and that is going to make it difficult for me to get over to the story I opened up, and now I know why it happened. I opened a story at Raw Story. That's always a risk. Let's see if I can find a way to clear this up, because there was some really exciting news there. And also, come on, goddammit, I need this stuff. I might have to open up Pocket on my other computer just to keep up to speed on what's happening here. I think the laptop is aging a bit and shows its age when it's under strain with lots and lots of tabs open. All right, let's see. We got rid of the pinwheel. Can I get over to this story? Because this was an exciting one. And this one was tweeted around by the Horse Whisperer, who reminds us that Michael Avenatti has yet to be proven wrong. I don't know if that's really true, but there it is. Oh, no, it's not going to flip for me, huh? Because it's an exciting story. Long story short, from what I can remember scanning before we ran into this problem, is that wherever he was appearing, Avenatti was saying that, I guess it's his speculation, or maybe he's heard something that leads him to the speculation, that the $1.6 million abortion payout allegedly by Broidy, right? Isn't that his name? Avenatti hints that the $1.6 million payout was for Trump, not Broidy, the GOP donor, as he's referred to in this headline. Slowly being able to recover my ability to scroll here. The lawyer for porn actress Stormy Daniels suggested that the $1.6 million hush money payoff to a Playboy model was actually made on behalf of President Donald Trump and not a Republican donor. Wouldn't that be interesting? It's Ken, right? Ken Broidy? Listen, I need you to do a favor. Elliot. Why do I think it's Ken? I keep doing that. I think everybody's Ken. Elliot, I need you to do me a favor. You've got to say that you got this Playboy model pregnant. And I got to be honest with you, taking a good look at Elliot Broidy, though he's rich, I find it difficult to believe. I mean, I always find it difficult to believe that anybody is, willing to have sex with these guys. I mean, the same is true of Donald Trump, but at least you bring the fame factor into it. And the feeling I think that he gives to Playboy models is very often, yes, this is somebody who will give you gifts. And, they like to say they don't want to get paid money for it because that has an even ickier feel than just accepting gifts. But, I assume that there are people who find him entertaining and engaging, and they like his attention, and he's famous, and he's supposedly wealthy, and they think this will work out well for them. I'm not going to marry the guy, although if the opportunity arises, perhaps I will. But in the meantime, I'll just have some fun and whatever, like get pregnant and have an abortion. That's a blast. Everybody loves to do that. How about that for an allegation, though? Attorney Michael Avenatti appeared Thursday on MSNBC's Morning Joe. Thursday being today. Morning Joe being that terrible show on MSNBC that Armando watches to torture himself, where he gave a wide-ranging interview on the lawsuit against the president and related criminal investigation of Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, and said reporting on the case had missed an important detail. Quote, "So, Mika, you are familiar with the fact that a week ago, Judge Wood ordered Michael Cohen's attorney to disclose all of his clients for the last 3 years?" Avenatti said. And there were 3 clients listed. 3 clients listed. Do you recall which 3? Brzezinski listed Trump, Fox News host Sean Hannity, and Republican donor Elliot Broidy. But Avenatti said she was making the same mistake everyone else had. Ooh. No, he said. Mr. Trump, the Trump Organization, and Sean Hannity. Mr. Broidy was not disclosed in open court as one of Michael Cohen's clients. Is that the case? Co-host Joe Scarborough asked the attorney what that meant. I think at some point we are going to find out if, in fact, the client connection with the $1.6 million settlement was, in fact, Mr. Broidy. I'm going to leave it at that. Avenatti wouldn't say it, but the implication seems clear. Cohen negotiated a $1.6 million hush money payment to a Playboy model who became pregnant during an affair and then had an abortion. News reports had identified Brody as the client who agreed to pay the woman in installments over 2 years if she agreed to remain silent about the relationship, but Avenatti said Cohen's lawyers ruled him out in open court. That would leave Trump, or possibly Hannity, as the likely clients who arranged the payment. Brody resigned earlier this month as deputy finance chairman of the Republican National Committee after the payments were reported. That is really interesting. But let's see. Well, Armando is following up on this. I mean, it didn't strike me as I was reading it. He's one comment that I saw him make here is he says, "No, you're reporting on a false story or a wrong story." Where is that comment coming from? Now, he's put that over on Twitter. That's why it was making beeping noises at me. And, of course, it's going to take me half an hour to switch over to that because of how slowly the laptop is running. But, yeah, how did Brody come up in getting mentioned? Is it just wrong that Brody wasn't named as one of the clients in open court? Is that just not correct? Maybe that's what's going on. But, well, let's see. I can't find the comment now because everything's slowing down. However, my Skype does still work, so if you wanted to clear that up verbally, we could take that call and you could put us back on the right track. But perhaps it's enough of a warning flag to simply say there's something wrong with this story and we'll have to find out what it is. All we've got is Avenatti's claim that didn't happen, and Raw Stories reporting that he said this, and then the Horse Whisperer's assurance that he's never been proven wrong. And I don't think, I mean, how do I know that? Who says that about anybody? Eventually, everybody's proven wrong.
I just want to wave you off that story because it's wrong.
All right. Is it that Brody was in fact
Brody
named?
was disclosed in a court filing required by the court the day of that hearing.
All right.
You and I actually discussed that filing that day.
Yes.
And we talked about
that doesn't
Brody
mean
being
anything
disclosed,
for me.
But in fact, in one place they disclose them, and then they say there's only one client. It was a bad filing but they did disclose them. So Avenatti was just wrong on that. I don't know what made him say that, but he's wrong.
Now, it is still entirely possible. He could be wrong, and it could still turn out to be the case that Trump is the one who did this, and he just says, Elliot, I need you to cover for me, and for some reason somebody would agree to do that. I don't know why.
I think the whole extortion angle that's trying to go down the road with is still valid. It's just, the opening of this story is premised on something that's wrong.
Well, okay.
Brody was disclosed. It very well may be Cohen extorted him. He got Keith Davidson and him in cahoots. Our old theory of what the heck is this all about? Whoever calls another lawyer as opposed to the party you're seeking, you don't even know he is his lawyer.
Right.
So all that's still valid. But
okay.
The part that's wrong is Brody was disclosed.
Okay. Well, we have that straight now, and that'll probably do for that story. But I thought, well, that's pretty explosive. We'll put that one out there and back off from it later. Why not?
Yeah. The thing that happened in the Cohen case today is the DOJ just filed their statement on what they want to go forward with on this privilege review. They've agreed to a special master. They have one in mind, and a electronic review process, which is much faster, which they say would take 2 weeks. They also mentioned, and by the way, it shouldn't be that voluminous contra what Mr. Cohen's lawyers and Mr. Trump's lawyers had said to this court, because first of all, Mr. Hannity said he never represented me, and number two, Mr. Trump said this morning that he only had him for a teeny tiny amount of cases.
Yeah, so that would
by the way,
very little paperwork.
That's nonsense. The Cohen was counsel to the Trump organization for 12 years. As we've discussed.
Well, they hardly do any real estate deals over at the Trump organization. So,
with Trump's lying, I mean, Cohen had, he may have done independent businesses, and that may be what they're investigating. But if you're in-house counsel for an organization, you're in-house counsel. That means you're doing more than teeny tiny amount.
Yeah. Where's Alan Garten in
work.
all this?
So
how did he manage to
it's
stay
a
out of
mess.
this?
Trump
Okay.
made a mistake today, well, as he does every day, but I'll let you get back to the show.
Okay.
I just wanted to give you that update.
Thank you very much. Very well worth taking a few minutes to say. All right. Well, grain of salt. Giant grain of salt. Okay. Thanks, Armando. Let's see. Where else might we turn for updates? Let's see. Okay. Well, let's see if we can keep our connection rolling here and update ourselves with some of the pocket stories. This is just moving so slowly. I think I'll switch over to the other computer to keep up with things. All right. Other, let's say, lightning round updates. Do we need anything else here? We do have a couple of these things. We talked about that. Ah, yes. Here's another sort of weird corruption story from ProPublica, which I will at least share the premise of so that we're all up to date on such things. The hidden hand of a casino company in Trump's contact with Vietnam, as highlighted in their Trump Inc. podcast, Trump Incorporated, Trump Inc. podcast over at ProPublica, and they're always pretty well on the ball with these things. Do you remember recalling all the way back to Trump's first call with the Vietnamese prime minister during the transition in between the election and Inauguration Day? It turns out, you recall that there was a very odd, it was odd for Trump to make among his earliest calls one with the Prime Minister of Vietnam. Well, it turns out, Justin Elliott reports here for ProPublica, that Trump's first call with the Vietnamese PM was arranged by Mark Kasowitz, a Trump personal lawyer who has another client with business interests in Vietnam. Nothing necessarily illegal here, but again, the president basically shooting from the hip on important issues of foreign policy and doing so at the behest of people who are manipulating him for their own ends. Or at least that's the allegation. On December 14th, 2016, 1 month after his election, President-elect Donald Trump had a call with the Prime Minister of Vietnam. At a time when foreign governments were scrambling to contact Trump, the conversation was a victory for the Vietnamese. At last, victory in Vietnam. He has achieved his long-delayed dream, Donald Trump has. The fifth or sixth deferment, if you will. State television broadcast footage of the call with the Prime Minister surrounded by other smiling officials, but inside the State Department, officials were puzzled and concerned. But screw those guys. They're the deep state. Historically, post-election calls to heads of state are choreographed affairs. Careful deliberation goes into who the president-elect speaks to first, and career diplomats deliver background briefings on issues to be raised and avoided. Do not congratulate, etc., etc. But of course, careful deliberation is out the window in all things with this guy. The Trump transition operation ignored those conventions. The contact with Vietnam was not set up by the State Department. Instead, Trump's personal lawyer, Mark Kasowitz, helped arrange the call. Kasowitz had another client with a keen interest in Vietnam, Philip Falcone, an American investor with a major casino outside Ho Chi Minh City. Who would have dreamed all those years ago? After the Trump call, Kasowitz traveled to Vietnam with Falcone. They met with government officials as part of an effort to persuade Vietnam to lift the ban on gambling for its citizens. Such a shift would deliver vastly more gamblers to Falcone's casino. Yes, you would think so. Interesting that they would even bother to locate a casino outside Ho Chi Minh City when Vietnamese nationals are not allowed to visit casinos. Just sort of out-of-towners. If you happen to be in Ho Chi Minh City and looking to gamble, and really it's a gamble going to Ho Chi Minh City in any case, I would imagine. I don't know, making that up. Phil asked Mark if he could arrange a phone call between the president and the Prime Minister of Vietnam. Said a person familiar with the call, Mark did that. In an interview, Falcone denied he requested the call. He added, there was nothing improper about arranging such a call. It's just lending a hand when people ask you, he said. The spokesman for Kasowitz acknowledged the lawyer provided a telephone contact to the Vietnamese government to call Trump. I have his cell phone number. Here it is. By the way, it's just lending a hand when people ask you. Yeah, sure. It's just, do I have something in this hand that I could put into your hand that would make this thing in this hand go away? It's bribery. It's emoluments. It's, treason. But hey, other than that, it's not by itself treason, of course, but it is part of a larger pattern. Kasowitz has represented Trump for over 15 years, including in the Trump University fraud case, which he lost, against allegations of sexual harassment, and most recently in the Russia investigation. Falcone, who was barred from the securities industry several years ago after admitting to wrongdoing in managing his hedge fund, of course, because what else do you do with a hedge fund but mismanage one, has been trying for several years to salvage his several $100 million bet on Vietnam's gaming industry. And it's a bad bet. In Vietnam, they don't allow their citizens to go to casinos. Well, but could I put a casino there for other people? Sure. That is a bad bet, but go for it. I'm just betting that we can change the Vietnamese government's mind. And if I can leverage the president of the United States to do it, so much the better. So far, that investment has not paid off, in large measure because of the rules limiting casinos to foreign bettors. It's not clear whether Trump mentioned the casino in his call, because we didn't get a transcript of it, or in any other communications with the Vietnamese. A White House spokeswoman referred all questions to Kasowitz, so that's not going to help anything. The Vietnamese, why? It was a call from the President of the United States to the Prime Minister of Vietnam. Why is it a valid answer to refer all questions to Kasowitz? That's ridiculous. They should have put her on the rack right then and there and been done with it. Why would you accept that as an answer? The Vietnamese embassy in the U.S. didn't respond for a request for comment, but it's not their job to do so. U.S. embassy officials in Vietnam heard about the call in advance from Falcone's casino company, not the Trump transition. Arrest them all, please. Why are we waiting? And they never received information from the Trump transition about what was said on the call. Their only understanding of what was discussed came from Vietnamese officials, according to a person with knowledge of the episode. You want the State Department to set those calls up and take notes, said Susan Rice. You know who she is. You want contacts made in a fashion that can be accountable to the president-elect. You want background briefings for the president-elect. In November of 2008, the Obama transition explicitly warned high-profile campaign supporters not to, under any circumstances, speak to any foreign officials or embassies on behalf of the transition or President-elect Obama, because he knew what he was doing. In other words, he was being circumspect. He knew that there were legal implications to having people do things like that. This president doesn't apparently believe in that, and that gets us to another story that maybe I can drop and discuss for you. We've hinted at it earlier, too. The Vietnam call was just one instance of how the Trump administration has blurred the lines between private business interests, you think, and those of the country. Trump, who did not divest from his own real estate empire, has declared America, quote, open for business. Many have tried to take him up on the promise. Business people, lobbyists, friends, and foreign dignitaries have all vied for access to Trump since his election, believing it can mean lucrative contracts, eased regulations, or otherwise convey to potential partners a proximity to power and influence. Falcone, who didn't donate to Trump's campaign, amazingly enough, told ProPublica his casino hasn't gained anything from the call. Literally nothing has changed since the new administration. Okay. Falcone's business interests in Vietnam go back a decade. His Harbinger Capital Fund has poured money, Bloomberg put it at more than $450 million, into a casino resort called, really, the Grand Ho Tram Strip. Ho Tram. I don't know who or what that is, but it's the Grand Ho for short, I'm sure. Located on a remote coastline 75 miles outside of Ho Chi Minh City. I don't know what tram is. Ho different, Ho Chi Minh different from Ho Tram. I don't know anything about Vietnam. The complex includes a gleaming Vegas-style tower, a golf course designed by the legendary Greg Norman, and a casino with 90 tables and a private area for high rollers dubbed the Pearl Room. But the illegality of gambling for Vietnamese citizens has posed a nearly insurmountable obstacle, you would think, right? On a recent visit, the sprawling casino was almost entirely empty. Staff outnumbered customers. One industry observer quipped, you could drive a truck through the casino and not hit anyone. That's good for safety. To save the project, Falcone has spent years lobbying the Vietnamese government to allow its citizens to gamble in his casino. man. Okay, well, there's a lot more to this story, and I recommend that you read it, but it will mean not getting to the rest of it. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to it tomorrow. But one story that I wanted to drop for further consideration, not breaking news or anything, but something I mentioned the other day and talked about a little bit with Armando. And I see that there's an opinion piece here in the New York Times that sort of tends to address it. This was actually aimed at the last Supreme Court hearing that, why is this? Are you kidding me? All right. Well, I won't be able, now I'm not able to read it on the other computer because the computer I'm reading it on doesn't know that I'm a subscriber to the New York Times and therefore refuses to open the damn thing. This is really, here we go. Finally, I got here. Kate Shaw, who is, as I recall, a professor at Cardozo Law School, writing this piece, Should the President's Words Matter in Court? This was in relation to the hearing about the travel ban and the willingness of lower appeals courts to use the president's tweets and other utterances as evidence in considering whether or not to uphold or strike down various parts or the entirety of the travel ban and other executive orders, not having to do with other issue areas, and whether or not the president's words should be considered in all this. She writes, the most striking aspect of last Thursday's opinion by the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, which rejected the Trump administration's latest effort to revive its travel ban for individuals from 6 predominantly Muslim countries, was its reliance on Donald Trump's own words as a candidate, president-elect, and president. The court leaned particularly heavily on his now famous campaign statement that he was, quote, calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, unquote. The government's lawyers argued that those words had no bearing on the order's lawfulness, but the court disagreed. The president's words, the court found, led to only one conclusion. The order was driven by religious intolerance, animus, and discrimination, not a genuine national security need, as the order claimed, and was thus most likely unconstitutional. What weight, if any, she asked, should the words of a United States president have in court? It's not a question the Supreme Court has ever answered, but if the Trump administration asks the court to hear this case and the court agrees to do so, the outcome will almost certainly turn on this issue. I believe, generally speaking, she says, the correct view is that the speech of a candidate or even a president should not ordinarily be relevant to a court's determination of the meaning or lawfulness of government action. This is especially true when the words of the president conflict with executive branch positions offered in other more authoritative settings and documents. And I understand the impulse here. And but if you stop there, you would think that she was arguing for Trump's side in this, and it's not really so. She goes on to say there is an exception to this rule, namely when presidential speech supplies evidence of intent or purpose of established legal relevance. For example, when assessing a claim of religious discrimination. Thus, the Fourth Circuit was right to rely on Mr. Trump's words in rejecting the administration's efforts to revive its travel ban, and the Supreme Court should follow suit. It is generally a mistake for a court to give legal force to statements whose goals are those of political mobilization or persuasion, or anything other than the articulation of considered legal positions. In most cases, the authoritative statements of the legal positions of the United States are contained in official settings and documents, like the arguments and briefs presented to courts by the Department of Justice. And that is largely true. We'll have to leave off the recitation from the article for today. Maybe we can pick it up a little bit tomorrow. But yeah, essentially what she's saying is under normal circumstances, where you have a circumspect and careful president, and as dumb as some previous presidents have been, it is usually the case that they adhere to the general rule that anything, that you admit out of court like that could be brought to bear. And you don't have to be as abnormal a president as Donald Trump in order for it to be the case. That is, there's known exceptions. But almost everything Trump does is would come under one of these exceptions. He very deliberately goes outside the advice of lawyers and government officials all the time and blurts out admissions against interest here, and circumspect presidents that are careful with their words and understand the weight their words can have, not only legally in some cases, but just in the case of public opinion and forming and driving public policy. People who take care about such things are ordinarily due such deference. The standards of deferring to the president's judgment usually is a default position taken up by the courts when there's some question because there's some conflict about what a certain thing could mean. And you say, a careful president who really takes care to watch where the lines are drawn might not necessarily really be tipping his hand every time he speaks. But that's not happening here. We don't need tiebreaker rules to understand what Trump means. He says it every day.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thanks for listening, and as always, great follow-up on tap here from Justice Putnam with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and as usual, I've given myself too little time to talk about it, but be assured that if you tune in, you'll be hearing all kinds of fantastic stories from all the sampling and all the areas that I didn't get to today.